A shy nursing student skipped her hospital shift to help a bleeding stranger. Little did she know, the man she saved would change her life forever. Emma had always been the kind of person who preferred the background. She wasn't the loud, attention-grabbing type. Her friends would describe her as quiet, gentle, and thoughtful. Someone who always noticed the little things that others overlooked. Even in her nursing classes, where students often competed to shine, Emma focused on learning, absorbing every detail of patient care, always taking careful notes and practicing diligently. She loved nursing not because it made her famous or gave her a sense of pride. Every day, she woke up early, carried her heavy backpack full of books, and walked briskly to the hospital ready to face long hours of clinical rotations. It was exhausting work, but Emma never complained. She believed that every patient, no matter how small the issue, deserved attention, respect, and care. That particular afternoon, the air was crisp, and the streets were busier than usual. Emma was hurrying to her hospital rotation, checking the time on her watch, worrying that she might be late. Clinical shifts were strict, and missing even a few minutes could result in scolding from the supervisors. She adjusted her uniform nervously, straightened her hair, tried to focus on the tasks ahead, rehearsing in her mind how she would approach her patients that day. Lost in her thoughts, she almost didn't notice the commotion up ahead. A small crowd had gathered near a busy street corner. Curious, Emma slowed her pace and saw a man lying on the ground. Blood was pooling on the pavement, and a few people were standing around, unsure of what to do. Some were on their phones, perhaps calling for help, while others looked hesitant, frozen in shock. Emma's heart immediately skipped a beat. She knew from her training that in situations like this, every second counted. Even though she was a student, she felt an undeniable pull to act. Without thinking twice, she dropped her bag gently onto the sidewalk and rushed over. People parted instinctively, giving her space, sensing the calm urgency in her movements. Kneeling beside the man, she could see the wound clearly. It was deep, and the bleeding was steady. Panic fluttered around her briefly, but Emma quickly focused on what she had learned in school. She checked the man's pulse and breathing, and when she found them stable, she turned her attention to stopping the bleeding. Emma rummaged through her bag and found the small first aid kit she always carried. She had packed it for emergencies, never thinking she would actually need it on the street. She carefully cleaned the wound, her hands steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her. She spoke to the man softly, reassuring him that he would be okay, even though she didn't know him. Her voice was gentle but firm, giving a sense of comfort that only someone truly trained to care could provide. Passersby watched in amazement, whispering among themselves about how calmly she was handling the situation. Minutes passed, which felt like hours. Emma worked meticulously, wrapping the wound with sterile bandages, making sure it was secure and would prevent further harm. She reminded the man to stay still, explaining that moving too quickly could worsen the injury. Her hands were slightly trembling now, but she didn't let it show. Her focus was absolute, driven by an instinctive desire to help rather than by any thought of recognition or reward. Even as she worked, a small part of her mind flickered with worry. She knew she was missing her clinical rotation. Her supervisors would be expecting her, and she feared the reprimand that would surely come. But as she looked at the man lying vulnerable and in pain, that worry seemed trivial. The right thing to do, she felt, was to help him first. Time had slowed down, and the world around her seemed to fade. Only she, the injured man, and the steady rhythm of her actions existed in that moment. Finally, an ambulance arrived. Emma quickly explained what she had done, detailing the wound and the care she had provided. The paramedics nodded, impressed with her calm efficiency, and gently lifted the man onto a stretcher. He looked up at her, eyes wide, and whispered a quiet thank you. Emma nodded and smiled softly, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. She didn't stick around to receive more thanks or recognition. She carefully picked up her bag, adjusted her uniform, and walked away, slipping quietly back into the flow of the city streets as she made her way to the hospital. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions. She felt proud, but also anxious about missing her shift. She replayed every detail in her mind, wondering if she had done everything correctly. But deep down, A warm satisfaction filled her heart. She had acted when it mattered, without hesitation, and had truly made a difference in someone's life. That day marked more than just a clinical emergency. It was a quiet moment that revealed who Emma really was. A shy, reserved nursing student had stepped into a situation where courage, compassion, and skill mattered more than rules or schedules. Even though she might have seemed small and quiet to the world in that moment, she had shown a strength and selflessness that few could match. And as she continued toward the hospital, she carried with her a newfound sense of confidence and purpose, unaware that this single act of kindness would soon change her life in ways she could never have imagined. Emma stood there for a moment, catching her breath, as the ambulance drove away with the man she had just helped. The city around her seemed to hum louder now, the usual noise of traffic and pedestrians returning to her senses after the intense moment she had just experienced. Her hands still tingled from adrenaline, and her heart was racing not from fear, but from the unexpected intensity of the situation. She looked down at her bag, feeling the weight of responsibility she had just carried, and a sudden realization that she had missed her clinical rotation. A tiny pang of anxiety appeared. She knew her instructors could be strict, and missing a shift could result in a warning or worse, but she couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. The thought of the man lying there bleeding before she arrived reminded her that she had made the right choice, even if it came with consequences. As she walked back toward her usual path to the hospital, people gave her curious glances. Some whispered to each other, pointing in her direction. Emma felt a strange mix of embarrassment and satisfaction. She wasn't used to attention, and she certainly hadn't sought it. Her life had always been quiet, filled with routines of studying, attending classes, and practicing nursing skills in the clinical lab. But today had broken that routine. Today had forced her into real-life emergency care, to a situation where her knowledge, calmness, and courage had been tested. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the man she had helped. She wondered who he was, what had caused his injury, and whether he was okay now. Her mind, trained to notice details and patience, remembered the way his hands had trembled, the color of his skin, and the panic in his eyes before she had reassured him. She remembered speaking softly, instructing him to stay still, and applying the bandages carefully. Even as she reflected, she realized she hadn't hesitated for even a second. Her training had kicked in naturally. Her instinct to help had overridden her usual shyness. The small crowd that had gathered while she tended to him had dispersed, some still glancing her way with admiration. Emma didn't linger. She felt no need for praise. Her satisfaction came from knowing she had done her best, and that the man was now in professional hands. The paramedics had been impressed with her composure and knowledge, which gave her a quiet sense of pride. She remembered their words, "You handled that very well for someone so young. You did exactly what we would have done in those first critical minutes." Emma smiled faintly, a blush creeping across her cheeks, though she remained modest about her actions. As she walked toward the hospital, her mind began to race with thoughts about the missed clinical rotation. She imagined her instructor's disappointed expression, the potential lecture she might receive, and the questions about why she wasn't present. Her heart sank slightly, but she also realized something important. Real-life emergencies like the one she had faced weren't part of the routine schedule. The experience she had just had, the immediate decision-making, the pressure, the responsibility, was something that could never be taught in a classroom. She had faced a real-life scenario where her skills mattered, and her actions had tangible consequences. That knowledge filled her with a quiet confidence that her studies alone couldn't provide. Walking through the hospital doors, Emma felt the usual sterile smell and the soft echo of footsteps in the hallways. Everything seemed normal, but she felt different. There was a subtle shift in her awareness, a new layer of self-assurance that hadn't been there before. She checked in with the administration, her stomach tightening with anticipation, expecting questions about her absence. But as she approached the nurse at the front desk, she noticed a subtle change in the atmosphere. There was curiosity in their eyes, an unspoken awareness that something unusual had happened. Emma hesitated, wondering if she should mention what had taken her away. She decided against it, thinking that what mattered was that the man had been helped, not the recognition she would receive. Her first few patients that day were unaware of the extraordinary act she had performed. She moved through her rotation with diligence, tending to each patient with the same gentle care she always did. But internally, Emma felt a difference. Her confidence had grown, not arrogance, but a steady assurance that she could act under pressure. The small victories of applying a bandage, reassuring a frightened patient, and staying calm amidst chaos had given her a new perspective on her abilities. For the first time, she felt that her quiet nature wasn't a limitation. It was a strength that allowed her to observe, focus, and act when it truly mattered. During breaks, Emma replayed the event in her mind repeatedly. She remembered the crowd, the way people had stepped back, giving her space to work. She remembered the man's faint, grateful smile before the ambulance arrived. Every detail felt vivid, as if etched in her memory. Her emotions were a mixture of relief, satisfaction, and the tiniest hint of fear of what could have happened if she hadn't acted quickly enough. But that fear was quickly replaced by a calm pride. She had faced a situation that few nursing students ever encountered, and she had acted with skill and compassion. Later that evening, after her shift ended, Emma walked home slowly. The city lights twinkled around her, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about how unpredictable life could be, how one ordinary walk could suddenly place someone in a position to make a real difference. She realized that being a nurse wasn't just about following schedules, taking notes, or passing exams. It was about having the courage to act, the presence of mind to remain calm, and the heart to care for people in their most vulnerable moments. Emma felt a deep connection to the profession she had chosen. Understanding that it was more than a career, it was a responsibility, a calling that demanded empathy and action. That night, as she lay in bed, Emma reflected on what had happened. She thought about the stranger she had helped, wondering if he knew how much his situation had tested her skills and character. She smiled softly, feeling a warm glow of fulfillment. Her shy nature had never prevented her from doing the right thing. In fact, it had helped her focus, stay calm, and act with precision. She realized that sometimes the most extraordinary moments came not from ambition or recognition, but from quiet courage, empathy, and the willingness to step forward when it mattered most. Emma drifted off to sleep with a sense of peace, knowing that even though she had missed her clinical shift, she had done something far more important. She had saved a life, made a difference, and discovered a new layer of herself that she hadn't known existed. The events of that afternoon had shown her that heroism didn't always need applause. Sometimes it was about quietly choosing to help, even when no one was watching, and that choice could change lives, including her own. The next day, Emma woke up feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She wasn't sure what to expect. She had returned to her usual routine at the hospital, trying to shake off the lingering thoughts of yesterday's incident. She brushed her teeth slowly, staring at her reflection in the mirror, wondering if anything about her life could change because of that single act of kindness. After all, she was just a shy nursing student, someone who usually blended into the background, someone who had quietly done her best without expecting recognition. When she arrived at the hospital, she noticed something unusual. The receptionist looked at her differently than before. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, and whispers could be heard as she walked past. Emma felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. She approached the front desk to check in, expecting the usual questions about her schedule and rotation. Instead, she was asked to wait in a small office. Confused, she complied, sitting quietly, her hands folded in her lap. A few minutes later, a man entered the room. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and carried an air of calm authority. Emma immediately felt a sense of recognition. She had seen him in the news before, a man known not only for his wealth but also for his charitable work. Alexander Grayson. Her heart skipped a beat. He looked directly at her, a faint smile on his lips, and extended his hand. "Emma," said warmly, "thank you for what you did yesterday. You helped me when I needed it most." Emma blinked, unsure of what to say. She had expected gratitude from the paramedics, or perhaps a quiet acknowledgement from the hospital staff. But meeting the man himself, someone so prominent, was beyond anything she had imagined. Her shy demeanor made her hesitate, but she managed a small, polite smile. "It was nothing," she stammered. "I just did what I thought was right." Grayson shook his head gently. "It wasn't nothing. You acted quickly, calmly, and with skill. You could have walked away, but you didn't. That makes all the difference." Emma felt a flush of warmth rise to her cheeks. She wasn't used to being praised, especially not by someone like him. The words sounded surreal. She had never imagined that her quiet act of helping a stranger could lead to such a moment. She realized that what she had considered a simple duty had, in someone else's eyes, been extraordinary. Over the next hour, Grayson spoke to Emma about the incident. He asked questions about what she had done, how she had felt, and what went through her mind when she saw him injured. Emma answered honestly, recounting every detail. From the initial shock to the careful way she cleaned and bandaged his wound. She explained that she had carried a small first aid kit in her bag, something she always kept for emergencies. Grayson listened attentively, nodding and occasionally smiling at her humility. "You have a remarkable sense of responsibility," he said finally. "And more importantly, you have a heart that cares deeply for others. That is rare. You should be proud of yourself." Emma felt a strange mixture of pride and embarrassment. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight. Her life had always been private, focused on her studies and helping patients quietly. But now, sitting in the office with a man of such prominence, she realized that her actions had far-reaching effects she hadn't considered. Her quiet courage had made a tangible difference. And the ripple of her kindness was just beginning. Grayson then shared something unexpected. He told Emma that he had been following up with the hospital staff and the paramedics, learning more about the person who had saved him. Her name had come up repeatedly, described with admiration and respect. He explained that her calm and professional response had impressed not only him, but also everyone who had witnessed the situation. Emma listened, astonished. She hadn't expected recognition, and yet here it was, offered in a way that felt genuine and heartfelt. He paused for a moment, studying her face. "I want to help you, Emma," he said. "Not because I owe you anything, but because I see potential in you. Your compassion, skill, and courage are rare, if you're willing. I'd like to support your journey in nursing and perhaps even involve you in some of my philanthropic projects. People like you can make a huge difference, and I want to help you do more of it." Emma was taken aback. She had never imagined such an opportunity. Her quiet life, focused on studying and small acts of care, had suddenly opened a door she hadn't even known existed. She felt a swirl of emotions: gratitude, disbelief, excitement, and a touch of fear. The thought of working closely with someone so influential was intimidating, but deep down, she knew that this was a chance to expand her ability to help others in ways she had only dreamed of. Over the next few days, the story of Emma's actions began to spread quietly but steadily. News outlets picked up the incident, focusing on the young nursing student who had saved the life of a billionaire through sheer courage and skill. Social media buzzed with admiration for her selflessness, painting her as a modern-day heroine. Emma, who had always avoided attention, suddenly found herself in the spotlight. It was overwhelming, yet she handled it with the same grace and composure she had shown during the emergency. She answered questions politely, always emphasizing that she had simply done what any nurse would have done. Meanwhile, her interactions with Grayson continued. He offered mentorship, guiding her not only in advanced healthcare initiatives, but also in understanding how compassion and leadership could impact communities. Emma realized that she had entered a new chapter of her life, one where her actions could inspire and lead others. She began to see herself differently, not just as a shy student who worked quietly in the hospital, but as someone capable of influencing real change. At the same time, Emma remained grounded. She continued her studies with diligence, attending classes and clinical rotations, but now she carried a new confidence. The experience of helping Grayson had shown her that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear, about putting others before yourself, and trusting in your skills and training. Each patient she treated now benefited not only from her technical knowledge, but also from the quiet assurance she had gained through that life-changing encounter. Even her classmates noticed a subtle change. Emma, who had once been shy and reserved, now spoke more confidently in group discussions. She offered insights during clinical sessions, drawing on her real-life experience to provide perspective. Yet, she remained humble, never boasting about her experience. Her growth was quiet but noticeable, inspiring those around her without her even trying. The days passed, and Emma continued to reflect on what had happened. She realized that her act of kindness had created a chain reaction far beyond what she could have imagined. It wasn't just about saving one man's life. It was about the ripple effect of compassion, courage, and dedication. She understood now that her choices mattered, that even small actions could have profound consequences, and that sometimes life presented opportunities to rise beyond your fears and limitations. Through it all, Emma remained the same at her core: gentle, thoughtful, and dedicated to helping others. But she also discovered a new layer of herself, one capable of stepping forward when it mattered most and embracing the unexpected opportunities that life could offer. The encounter with Grayson had changed her life in ways she hadn't anticipated, opening doors to experiences, mentorship, and recognition that were previously unimaginable. And though the spotlight was new and sometimes intimidating, Emma faced it with quiet courage, knowing that the true measure of her character was not in fame or fortune, but in her unwavering commitment to care for others, no matter the cost. Emma's life began to shift in ways she had never imagined. After meeting Alexander Grayson, the billionaire whose life she had saved, her days were no longer just filled with classes and hospital rotations. Word of her act of courage had spread quickly, first within the hospital, then through local news, eventually across social media. People from all over were talking about the shy nursing student who had calmly bandaged a man's wound on the street, refusing help and putting his well-being above her own schedule. Despite the sudden attention, Emma remained humble. She didn't see herself as a hero, just someone who had acted instinctively when it mattered most. But the world around her had a different perspective, and Emma began to feel the weight of her actions in a way that was both exciting and overwhelming, even as the news circulated. Emma tried to maintain her normal routine. She attended her classes, studied late into the night, and participated in clinical rotations with the same diligence she always had. But she noticed subtle changes everywhere she went. Patients and colleagues now looked at her differently, with a mix of curiosity, admiration, and respect. Some recognized her from news articles, giving her small nods or quiet smiles. It was a strange sensation for someone who had always preferred to remain unnoticed. Emma was learning, perhaps for the first time, that actions born out of compassion could leave a lasting impression, sometimes far beyond the moment itself. Grayson remained a constant presence in her life, offering guidance, mentorship, and support. He didn't approach her with expectations or demands. Instead, he encouraged her to explore her own potential and follow her instincts. He invited her to observe some of the healthcare and philanthropic projects he oversaw, giving her insight into how large-scale initiatives were planned and executed. Emma found these experiences inspiring but also humbling. The world she glimpsed through Grayson's work was vast and complex, yet she realized that her small, decisive action, the act of simply bandaging a stranger's wound, was a kind of human compassion that made all the difference in real life. One afternoon, Grayson asked Emma to join him for a private meeting in one of his offices. As she entered, she felt a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. He greeted her warmly, offering a seat across from his polished desk. "Emma," he said, "I want to do more than thank you. I want to help you develop your skills, and I want to show you how your courage can influence others." Emma listened intently as he explained that he had created opportunities for young healthcare professionals to engage in projects that combined medical expertise with humanitarian work. He believed she had the heart, intellect, and calmness under pressure necessary to make a meaningful impact. Over the next few weeks, Emma began attending meetings, workshops, and community initiatives alongside Grayson and his team. She was introduced to other healthcare professionals, philanthropists, and volunteers, all of whom were eager to learn from her perspective. Initially, she felt shy and out of place among such accomplished individuals, but she quickly realized that her practical experience, empathy, and willingness to act were valued far more than her confidence in speaking. People were impressed not by her fame, but by the authenticity of her actions. Emma began to understand that her quiet nature, once seen as a limitation, was actually a strength. It allowed her to listen, observe, and act decisively when situations demanded it. Meanwhile, the public fascination with Emma grew. Local news stations ran human interest stories about her, focusing on the combination of courage, compassion, and humility she displayed. Social media posts praised her as a real-life hero and a role model for young people aspiring to enter healthcare. Some messages were overwhelming, filled with praise she wasn't accustomed to receiving. Yet Emma remained grounded. She reminded herself daily that her actions were not about recognition. They were about helping others in their most vulnerable moments. This mindset kept her from being distracted by the sudden attention and allowed her to focus on her goals. Emma also began to mentor other nursing students, sharing her experiences and emphasizing the importance of acting with empathy and courage. She encouraged her peers to remember that technical skills were essential, but the heart behind those skills mattered even more. Her quiet leadership style was different from what most expected. She didn't command attention, but she inspired through example. Students who once overlooked her now sought her advice. Recognizing the combination of competence, compassion, composure that she had demonstrated. At the same time, Emma's bond with Grayson grew stronger. He continued to support her education, providing resources, guidance, and opportunities she had never dreamed possible. Yet, he never pressured her to act beyond her comfort. Instead, he nurtured her strengths, allowing her to grow at her own pace. Emma appreciated his trust and respect. Seeing in him a mentor who recognized her potential without overshadowing her individuality, despite all the external changes, Emma remained humble. She still walked the same streets, studied in the same library, cared for patients with the same gentle attention as before. But internally, she had transformed. The confidence she gained from that one decisive moment, the moment she chose to help a stranger instead of following the way. Strict schedule had expanded into a broader sense of self-assurance. She knew now that her actions could have far-reaching consequences, and she carried this awareness with grace and humility. Emma's story also began to inspire others beyond her immediate circle. People shared her story in schools, nursing programs, and community centers, emphasizing that heroism often comes from ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Emma, who had once thought of herself as too shy to make a difference, became a living example that courage and compassion were not reserved for the loud or famous. They could come from anyone willing to act when it mattered most, even as her life became busier with new responsibilities. Emma never lost sight of why she became a nurse in the first place. Every patient she treated, every student she mentored, and every project she engaged in carried the same core values: care, attention, and empathy. She had learned that recognition was fleeting, but the impact of genuine kindness and skill could last a lifetime. This understanding allowed her to navigate the growing attention with balance, ensuring that she remained true to herself, while embracing the new opportunities that had come her way. As weeks turned into months, Emma reflected often on how one spontaneous act of helping a stranger had changed her life. That single decision had introduced her to a world of possibilities she had never imagined. It had connected her to mentors, opened doors to influential networks, and inspired countless others. And yet, through it all, Emma remained the same, at her core gentle, shy, and deeply committed to caring for others. She realized that her quiet courage was now a guiding force, allowing her to navigate challenges with confidence and empathy. Through her journey, Emma learned a profound lesson: that true recognition comes not from applause or social media praise, but from knowing that you acted with integrity and compassion. She understood that her life, once predictable and quiet, could now influence many. But it was her unwavering commitment to care that remained the foundation of everything she did. And as she continued to grow, both as a nurse and as a person, Emma carried with her the quiet but powerful realization that small acts of kindness, when performed with courage and heart, could truly change lives, including her own. Emma's life had changed in ways she could hardly have imagined. From a quiet, shy nursing student who walked unnoticed through the hospital corridors, had become someone whose courage and compassion were recognized far beyond her classroom. Yet despite the attention and opportunities, she remained deeply grounded, committed to the same values that had guided her from the start: empathy, patience, and the desire to help others. She had learned that recognition and fame were fleeting, but the impact of a single act of kindness could ripple through countless lives, including her own. In the months following the incident with Alexander Grayson, Emma found herself balancing a life that was both familiar and completely new. She continued her clinical rotations and academic studies, but now she also attended meetings with Grayson's team, learning about healthcare projects, philanthropy, and the ways large-scale efforts could benefit communities. At first, the meetings had been intimidating. Emma remembered sitting quietly in rooms filled with accomplished doctors, nurses, and social workers, feeling her heart race as she tried to absorb everything. But she soon realized that her experiences, the calm, decisive care she had shown in a critical moment, gave her insights that no textbook or lecture could teach. Her quiet strength, the same trait that had once made her shy, now allowed her to observe carefully, think critically, and offer solutions that others respected. Emma also began mentoring other nursing students, something she never thought she would do. She shared her experiences not to boast, but to inspire. She emphasized that being a nurse wasn't just about following procedures or memorizing medical facts. It was about courage, empathy, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. Her peers listened intently, fascinated by the story of the girl who had saved a billionaire's life with nothing more than her knowledge, calmness, and compassion. Slowly, Emma realized that her quiet confidence could influence others, showing them that even someone reserved could make a profound difference in the world. Despite the growing attention and new responsibilities, Emma remained true to herself. She still walked the streets she had always walked, still studied in the same library, and still approached each patient with the same gentle, attentive care. But internally, she had transformed. She felt a new sense of purpose and self-assurance. She no longer doubted her abilities, or felt that her shy nature was a limitation. Instead, she embraced it as part of what made her unique, a trait that allowed her to observe carefully, act decisively, and maintain calm under pressure. She understood now that courage wasn't about being loud or assertive. It was about acting with integrity and heart, even when no one was watching. One day, Grayson invited Emma to accompany him on a community health initiative in a nearby town. Emma had seen projects like these in textbooks but had never witnessed one firsthand. She observed as medical teams set up temporary clinics, treated patients with limited access to care, and educated the community about health and hygiene. Emma's heart swelled as she realized the real-world impact of her role. She helped administer care, explained procedures to patients, and offered reassurance to those who were scared or unsure. People looked at her not just as a nurse, but as someone who truly cared. And the gratitude she received was unlike anything she had experienced before. She realized that the ripple effect of one act of kindness could grow exponentially, influencing lives far beyond what she could have imagined. Meanwhile, her friendship with Grayson deepened. He continued to mentor her, offering guidance not just in healthcare, but in leadership, decision-making, and the responsibility that comes with influence. Emma valued his advice but never allowed it to overshadow her own judgment. She learned to combine his insights with her instincts and experiences, creating a unique approach that balanced compassion with action. She understood that influence wasn't about authority or wealth. It was about inspiring others to act with integrity, just as she had on that day when she tended to his wound. Emma's family and friends also noticed the change in her. She had always been quiet and cautious, but now she carried herself with a quiet confidence that inspired admiration. She spoke with more assurance, engaged more openly in discussions, and approached challenges with determination. Yet she remained humble. She did not seek the spotlight or crave recognition. Instead, she focused on her work, the people she cared for, and the opportunities to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. Her humility, combined with her courage and skill, made her all the more respected and admired by those around her. The public recognition continued as well. Stories of Emma's bravery and compassion appeared in newspapers, online articles, and social media platforms. She became a symbol of selfless action, a reminder that heroism doesn't always involve grand gestures. It can be found in quiet, decisive acts of care. Emma did not let this fame change her. She remained focused on her studies, her clinical work, and the small acts of kindness that had always defined her. She understood that recognition was temporary, but the impact of her actions was lasting. Through it all, Emma reflected on how far she had come. A single moment kneeling beside a stranger in need, bandaging his wound without hesitation, had transformed her life in unimaginable ways. That moment had opened doors, forged new relationships, and taught her lessons about courage, empathy, and the importance of acting with integrity. She realized that her shyness had never been a weakness. It had been a part of what made her unique, allowing her to act thoughtfully, calmly, and compassionately. She had learned that true heroism isn't about seeking attention, it's about choosing to act when it matters most. Emma's journey also reshaped her understanding of the world. She saw that compassion and skill could change lives in ways that went far beyond the immediate moment. She understood that helping others was not limited to individual acts. It could grow into projects, initiatives, and mentorship that impacted communities. Her work with Grayson's team allowed her to experience this on a larger scale. But she never lost sight of the smaller, personal moments that first defined her courage. She still remembered the fear in his eyes, the adrenaline rushing through her body, and the quiet determination that had guided her hands as she bandaged his wound. Those memories grounded her and reminded her why she had chosen nursing in the first place. As Emma continued her studies and professional growth, she also began to dream bigger. She envisioned a future where she could combine her medical knowledge, compassion, and newfound confidence to create programs that helped underserved communities, train future nurses, and inspire young people to act with courage and empathy. She knew that her journey had only begun, and that the lessons she had learned through one act of kindness would guide her. Every step of the way, by the time she graduated, Emma was no longer just a shy student. She was a confident, skilled, and compassionate nurse, admired by her peers, mentors, and the communities she served. She had learned that life sometimes presents opportunities that challenge your fears, push your limits, and reveal your true potential. Her experience had shown her that even a single act of courage could change lives, not just for the person you help, but for yourself, for those around you, and for the world. Emma's story ended not with fame or fortune, but with transformation. She had grown into a woman who understood the power of empathy, the importance of courage, and the impact of small, decisive actions. The shy nursing student who had once quietly followed her daily routine had become a beacon of quiet strength, proving that heroism is often found in moments of humility, kindness, and unwavering dedication. And though she had been recognized by the world, she knew that the true reward lay in the lives she had touched, the lessons she had learned, and the person she had become. Her life had been changed forever, not by wealth, fame, or recognition, but by one simple choice to help a stranger in need, and by embracing the lessons that choice had taught her. She had learned that courage isn't always loud, and heroism doesn't always seek applause. Sometimes it simply waits for the quiet soul willing to act, and in doing so, change everything.